Welcome to Letters to Rising Leaders. It's a podcast series about God, soul, love, and leadership. And I'm your host, Tom Mohr. For those of you following along with my book, Letters to Rising Leaders, this is week 13, and the topic is Jesus' grace. For the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about Jesus. We've talked about Jesus' love. We've talked about the truth that Jesus brings to us that helps us see the things we need to see. And today, I want to talk about Jesus' grace. Grace is that incredibly undeserved gift that Jesus freely gives every human being who is willing to receive it. That's really all he asks, is to receive it, right? It's always there because he loves us and he wants the best for us. He wants us to become the best people we can be, to return to our original goodness. And the simple reality is we human beings are not perfect. We fall short of God's glory all the time. We do so even when we're close to Jesus, because we're a messed up bundle of hurts and fears and regrets and indifference and a lack of understanding of how our actions are affecting others. And in that context, we are constantly in need of God's grace. Now, these sins can manifest in all kinds of ways, right? There's hate, there's greed, there's anger, there's envy, there's lust and gluttony and indifference, right? Those are all the ways when we screw up. That's sort of what it falls into one of those buckets, right? Now, there's another sin that is the worst of all of them, and that's the sin of pride. Now, as a leader, as a rising leader, you got to watch out for pride, because in pride, we make ourselves our God. We don't need Jesus. We don't need the divine at all, because we are the captains of our own tattered souls. And of course, what that means is that the steady accumulation of sins that we are committing in our lives are not reflected upon. We don't see it. We are so self-centered that we lose the capacity to even appreciate how far we've fallen away from goodness. So, let me share a story. When I was 41 years old, I had risen into a senior position. I was in charge of a $90 million revenue line, had about 100 people working for me. And I decided to participate in a retreat. It was a 4-day retreat called Cursillo. Cursillo means short course on Christianity. It's a movement that exists in multiple Christian denominations. And as I arrived, I was placed inside a table of 8 guys. And as I recall, there was a chiropractor and an FBI agent and a salesperson and a carpenter. And as we began to go around the room to share, my first feeling was a letdown. Like, oh, there's no executives here. I don't know that I'll have anything in common with these people. Am I about to waste my weekend? As we go around the table, I hear these people sharing their stories and why they had come on this retreat. And it came to the carpenter, and the carpenter pulled out a Bible. I hadn't brought a Bible. He put his hand on the Bible. He said, I read from this every day. And I pray to Jesus to show me how I can be the best version of myself today. The first thing that hit me was Jesus was a carpenter. And the next thing that hit me, and this is a true story, an image came to my mind. This table of men was on a bus bound to heaven. They were all in the front seats. I was hanging by the back bumper by my fingernails. It's literally the image that came to my mind. What I'm getting at is, it's only once our pride finally, that wall of pride finally comes tumbling down, that we can let Jesus in, that we can let in his love, that we can let in his truth to help us see the truth we must know about our sins. And then in our remorse, for us to be able to receive his grace, to cleanse us and renew us so that we can go back into the game and be servant leaders for him.
I'm going to leave it there. The song for this week is a classic spiritual. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Kelly Kadlec is singing the harmony. Enjoy.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble. Tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree?
Were you there?
Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
Were you there?
Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
Were you there?
Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble. Tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
Were you there?
Were you there when they rolled that stone away? Were you there when they rolled the stone away? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they rolled the stone away?
Were you there?
Were you there when they rolled that stone away? Jesus is risen. Thank God.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you'll join us next week for the next episode in this Letters to Rising Leaders podcast series. As I say each week, leader of goodness, go in faith to love and heal the world.